Hi, my name is Ashley Howell, and I'm here in Battlefield Park in New Bern, North Carolina. This video is going to discuss the local historic preservation of different historic sites in the New Bern area. This park, Battlefield Park, was the location and site of the Battle of New Bern, which occurred early in the Civil War on March 14, 1862. The New Bern Historical Society promotes and maintains this with private funding and volunteers. The New Bern Historical Society has been around since 1923, promoting and keeping the rich history of New Bern, North Carolina available to the public. The Historical Society was able to acquire this land by donation in the year 2000 by the Civil War Trust Foundation that was located out of Washington, D.C. They had received the property in 1996 when a local lumber company had donated this battlefield site to the Civil War Preservation Trust. General Richard Gatlin, the commander of the Confederate Department of North Carolina, split his troops between New Bern and Wilmington. In command of the troops in New Bern was General Lawrence O'Brien Branch. General Branch had no military experience. However, even though he had very little experience, he knew the waterway of the Neuse River would be Burnside's strategy to attack New Bern. Defenses had been set up at several of the forts down the Neuse River. Branch had also sunk a wooden vessel to slow down the Union troops they were anticipating. Branch attempted to set up and guard the area surrounding New Bern to protect them from this inevitable attack. Since the attack was expected to be an amphibious attack from the Neuse River, Branch focused his protection around this theory. Branch's theory would prove to be correct, but the precautions not enough for New Bern. Burnside ordered his forces of around 8,000 to move down the river to New Bern after landing at Slocum's Creek and Fisher's Landing. The attack on New Bern would begin the morning of March 14, 1862 at 7:30 in the morning. General Branch had received word of the troops landing, and the troops were quickly to advance towards New Bern. The Union troops would arrive in the morning and begin the Battle of New Bern. Although the Confederate troops gave a strong resistance to the approaching Federal troops, New Bern would eventually fall into the Union hands. New Bern, North Carolina is also the colonial capital of North Carolina, which gives it a rich 300 plus years history of historical events in the area. One of the more modern buildings that's under the Triumph House Foundation is the North Carolina History Center. This History Center was built in 2010 at the cost of $60 million and boasts over 60,000 square feet, and actually is listed as the Leadership in Energy and Environment Design and considered one of the greenest public buildings in North Carolina. The History Center has rotating exhibits as well as water views, rare artifacts, and interactive historical exhibits for visitors to be able to enjoy during their visit of the History Center. From permeable surface parking lots that allow protection to the wetlands surrounding the building, this building is one of the pride and joys of the Triumph Palace. It's important to discuss the Triumph Palace Commission. The Triumph Palace Commission is a state commission whose members are appointed by the governor to manage the Lantham Trust for Triumph Palace and to function as a board of trustees in the development of policies regarding the collections management, public programs, and preservation. The Triumph Palace Commission is comprised of around 25 appointed members that include the Secretary of North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources, the Attorney General of the State of North Carolina, and the Dean of College Arts and Sciences of East Carolina University, the Mayor of New Bern, and the Chairman of the Craven County Board of Commissioners. Local representatives play an important role in advising the state government on local as well as state officials play an important role in the Triumph Palace Commission. Recently, on the NC House floor, a bill of 332 was written that allows the Triumph Palace Commission to sell non-contributing house that was donated to them years ago. This bill also includes the proceeds from the sale to go directly to the Triumph Palace Fund, not the State General Fund. This is to help continue maintenance and updates that have been caused by recent hurricanes. This bill also does some cleaning up on legislation that was written in the 1940s that needs to be updated. This bill passed 115-0 in the North Carolina House and will continue on to the Senate. Tryon Palace is one of the more popular historic sites ran by the Tryon Palace Foundation. This was the governor's home when New Bern was designated as the colonial capital. William Tryon, who was the governor of North Carolina at the time, had brought over an architect by the name of John Hawkes who designed this palace. They began construction on this palace in 1767 and completed construction in 1770. The Tryon Palace Foundation is a 501c membership organization that was formed in 1993 to develop an audience and financial support for Tryon Palace. The foundation is administered by a 29-member board of directors. Several of the homes of the Tryon Palace Foundation are open to the public. One of the more modest homes is the Robert Hay House. This house was built in the first decade of the 19th century and has been restored to the appearance that it had between 1830 and 1850 after an addition had been completed in the 1820s. It just recently went under a 4-year restoration process, including archaeological, historical research, and careful restoration, which preserved nearly all the original plaster and woodwork. The Stanley House, which is one of the more prominent houses of the Tryon Palace Foundation, is rumored to be John Hawkes, the same architect who designed Tryon Palace, may have designed the Stanley House as well. Built on hand-hewn long-leaf pine, Stanley House has been moved twice and is one of the examples in New Bern of the Georgian architecture in the South. While the house has had many owners and been moved twice, it has been in its current location since 1966. The original owner, Stanley, was a powerful businessman who raided British vessels during the Revolutionary War. John Wright Stanley and his wife Anne Caudell lived in the house a few years before succumbing to the yellow fever epidemic of 1789. They had 9 children, and the youngest was only a few months old at the time of the parents' death. The house remained empty until the oldest son, John Stanley Jr., took possession in 1798. John Stanley Jr., a lawyer and a politician, is well known in the New Bern area due to his duel with a former state governor, Richard Dobbs Speight. In 1802, during the duel, Stanley mortally wounded Speight and had to leave New Bern until a judge convinced the governor to grant him a pardon. It was the first governor pardon ever granted in North Carolina. An interesting thing about the Stanley House is during the Civil War, the Stanley House briefly served as the headquarters for General Ambrose Burnside and was later used as a hospital. It has also served as the New Bern Public Library and was given to the Tryon Palace Commission when it was moved in 1966 and opened to the public in 1972. One of the more popular buildings that Tryon Palace Foundation runs is the New Bern Academy. This academy was the first school in the state of North Carolina, and although it's had many uses throughout the years, including a hospital during the Civil War, it was the original schoolhouse for both boys and girls. It was used for classes until 1971. Today, the building is used as a museum that focuses on Civil War, New Bern architecture, and the history of the building itself. The organizations of the New Bern Historical Society as well as Tryon Palace Foundation are 2 key organizations that help maintain and protect the historic sites in the area. These organizations need volunteers as well as private funding to be able to keep and protect these historical sites for future generations.